Yeah, there we go. All right, now we're rolling, I think. Boom. Yeah, so like we were saying, body composition, right, is lean mass versus fat mass, right? And there's an important distinction there because the more muscle mass we have, the more fat mass we can have in a healthy way. If we have too much fat mass, that causes some problems, right? Whereas with BMI, it only takes into account height and weight. And, from that video, you should know that weight doesn't matter, right? So you can take your scales and you can throw them in the garbage because it doesn't really tell you a whole lot, right? Because you can be building muscle mass and you can be losing fat mass and your weight can stay the same, and you can be actually what we call losing weight, but losing fat mass, right? And we do need a certain amount of fat mass as well. So again, this is that BMI chart that we have right here. This does have some utility. So large groups of people, if you're just studying data overall, this can be very effective for looking at health risks. So there is a benefit there. Also, if you don't really exercise or lift weights or anything like that, and you tend to be a pretty standard height, it can be fairly accurate, right? So this is decent for the general population. And so, this doesn't mean, if you're in the obese category, the overweight category, that means anything about you, right? It's like, but it could mean something, right? And so that's important to know. And we need to make sure that we're not treating ourselves poorly just because we're in a higher health risk category, right? Sometimes we don't like these words of obese, overweight, which they're trying to switch that over to being over fat because we don't want to lose weight because we can lose lean mass, and we'll talk about the problem with that. But it's all about this ratio. So we want to build good lean mass. We want to have a healthy amount of fat mass because, again, if we're underweight, we actually have a higher risk of heart disease and, decreased bone density, which can cause osteoporosis, which is not a fun time. So we need to have a certain amount. And women need at least 12%. That's bare minimum just to maintain health, right? Because hormones are mediated by the fat mass that you have. And if you don't have enough fat mass, hormones aren't responding appropriately, and then that can decrease our bone density and cause all kinds of problems. Men need at least 3%. And there's a lot of debate over this. That's like bare minimum. A lot of people will say that men should have at least 8% for good health. A lot of people will say that women should have at least 20% for good health. So there is a range there. And this is kind of the ranges. We've seen this before already. So, for men, mostly in our age range, we're looking at 8 to 19%, which, as you can tell, is significantly lower than the women's of 21 to 33%. So, again, these are conservative numbers. Some women can be healthy at 18%. Other women can be healthy at 14%, but 12% is kind of that bare minimum. So you got to watch out for that range. And, along with this, right, we need a certain amount of fat mass to be healthy. And when we talked about, body image and health and attraction last week, it's important to remember you're not responsible for looking for, trying to make yourself more attractive, right? It's like you need to improve your health because health is what other people find attractive, and what you see in the mirror isn't necessarily what other people see. And so we just got to be aware of that because our perceptions are off, and we're always way harder on ourselves. So go for health, and then, it doesn't matter if you find yourself attractive, you need somebody else to find you attractive, or hopefully that can happen, right? And so we want to think about health instead. So one of the reasons why men's body fat percentages are so much lower, well, actually, let's not go there yet. Let me show you what the heck has happened. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's say I show you this. Discuss with your group members which one do you think is a boy and which one do you think is a girl. Discuss. All right, let's go right here. What do we say?
You said that the pear would be considered the girl.
Yeah, so the pear might be the girl and the apple might be the boy, right? Yeah, interesting. So turns out men and women tend to distribute fat differently on their bodies, right? So men tend to hold it up more in their chest and their belly and their upper back areas, whereas women tend to hold fat more in their limbs. And now this isn't all the time, right? Sometimes women can hold fat up here like this, and sometimes men can hold fat down here in their hips and thighs, right? So everybody's unique and everybody's different, but testosterone tends to produce fat up and around the organ zones, and I believe it's estrogen. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe it's estrogen that tends to put fat down around the hips and thighs. So one of the reasons, when you go back to this, that men have, this is one reason only, but that men have such lower body fat percentages for health is because all this fat up and around here, and particularly around our organs, which is called visceral fat, is actually extra deadly for like heart disease, for instance. And so men have to have a lower one because it's good. They store their fat around their heart, which makes it more dangerous. And 2, because they don't have like sex-mediated hormones, like having children, for instance, right, is going to increase the need for fat mass for women. The other reason is breast tissue, which is adipose tissue, which is fat mass, right? And so that's another reason why women need a certain amount of body fat percentage. So, when people come into my lab, especially women, and, we get a body fat percentage of like 30%, they're like nervous right away. They're like, what? I'm 30% fat? It's like, yeah, that's perfect. Like, that's what you're supposed to be, right? That's exactly where you want to be. So, we got to watch out for this. We just got to make sure that we have enough so that we're in a healthy range. Along with this, it's important to know that you can't spot reduce fat. So we probably see these like ads and stuff that says like lose stubborn belly fat now, all these different things, right? It doesn't work that way. That's not a thing that happens. Your fat comes off your body across the board proportionally, right? And this is determined by genetics where your fat is stored. So like I store my fat right here, right? It's just the way my family is. Lots of diabetes, lots of heart disease, and so I got to watch that because that's going to cause some problems potentially in my future, right? Whereas some people are going to store some more fat back on their triceps, right, or down here in the hips and thighs. And this is kind of why we heard what's it called, cellulite, right, which is like kind of the dimples that can get on the backs of people's legs. Women tend to experience this at a little bit higher rate. The reason is because they tend to have a little bit more subcutaneous fat, which is 1, good and healthy, and 2, it usually deposits down here more so than men, whereas men accumulate that visceral fat, which is extra dangerous, right? So good thing to know about visceral fat is cardio is really good for reducing that. So you want to be having some type of cardio in your life. Walking, running, jogging, playing basketball, whatever you want to do. And it's more important for men than for women, but exercise is still super important for women. So, it's important for everybody. With that said, actually, another important thing is when you are looking, the next graph actually brings me right there. We're skipping ahead a little bit. Right here. So this graph, this is looking at BMIs of men on this side and women on this side. So again, BMI, not the best measure, but not the worst. And so what you notice here is a normal weight male and an overweight male have about the same risk factor for cardiovascular disease is what that is. So the light blue bars are years lived in the middle-aged years without cardiovascular disease, and then the dark blue are the years lived with cardiovascular disease. So normal weight and overweight are very close. And same with women. Normal weight and overweight are very close. So even if you're in that overweight category, that's completely fine, right? As long as you're exercising. Exercise is the most important thing when we're talking about health. Like if you take a normal weight person and an overweight person, and again, these are categories, right? Body composition is more important, but if we take those two people, let's say the overweight person is exercising, the normal weight person is not exercising, the overweight person is going to outlive that person, right? So exercise is primary, but we also want to be able to control this a little bit. Obviously, obese and morbidly obese, we see health years decline, and then underweight, we also see a decline. So there is an optimal range that we want to attempt to maintain. And that's a good thing to know about life, and that's what we're going to learn how to manage this today, because throughout your life, you're going to slowly increase in body fat, you're going to decrease, you're going to build muscle, you're going to lose muscle, and life gets stressful sometimes. So for instance, I graduated from my master's degree, I moved into a vehicle, thought I was going to climb mountains, and who cares about a job? Became horribly depressed, blah, 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 ruined my life, right? Anyways, I started working 60 hours a week because I ran out of money, and I wasn't exercising, wasn't sleeping, all this stuff. Eventually, when I got rehired at Boise State, I had access to our equipment, so I did a body composition test, and I looked the exact same, at least with clothes on, and I was 1% away from being overweight, right? And it's like, that doesn't really affect my health, but that's interesting, right? Because I lost a lot of muscle mass and I had too much fat mass. And so it's like, throughout your life, you're going to have to realize this and just make slight adjustments, because we can get ourselves into some real problems with like dieting culture, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Let's see here. So I was going to go, this is just a whole, let's just leave those up. This is a whole bunch of reasons why this is important to know, right? And we're going to talk about this more next week. But having extra fat mass can increase your risk of anxiety and depression. And one of the things you're going to realize about this class is like everything is integrated. So we also know that if you have depression, that increases your risk of gaining fat mass, right? And stress increases your risk of gaining fat mass. So it's like they go both ways, right? Sleep apnea. If you can't sleep, you're more likely to gain fat mass, right? But having too much fat mass interrupts your sleep. So all these things are kind of coordinating back and forth. Double the risk of heart disease. If you look at BMI, statistically speaking, again, someone with a BMI over 30 is going to lose about 2 to 4 years of life, and then somebody who is 40 or more is going to lose about 8 to 10 years of life. So, we want to learn how to manage this, because if you can manage it appropriately, life is just going to go a lot more smooth, and you're not going to have so many medical things. It's just really sad. I got a friend, he's for sure in the morbidly obese section, and he's doing fine now. He's like 24, but by the time he's 40, it's not going to look pretty, right? So he's going to have a very tough time by the time he's 40. So, he's moving back here. I'm going to see if we can get him in the weight room and, get him moving in the right direction. So, all right, another thing to think about is when we're thinking about how much fat mass you have, there's this idea called the set point theory. Now, it's just a theory, but there's some good evidence for this, is you have a certain set of genetics, and some people's genetics predispose them to carrying more fat mass. Some people's genetics predispose them to carrying less fat mass. Like me, I've always had a hard time keeping fat mass on. Like, I just can't do it, right? I just always, and even muscle mass, right? I'm just always losing weight, it seems like. Whereas other people, they just always kind of struggle with their weight, right? And so it's important to know that we're not all on an even playing field. Some people have a harder time than others, right? And when you're thinking about that, they've actually done some twin studies where they'll take, twins who were adopted, didn't grow up with the same family, and they look at what are they more similar to, their parents or the family that they lived with. And it's typically the parents that they're more similar to in body composition-wise. So, we're not all on an equal playing field. Life is more difficult with managing weight than others, for some people over others. So, you get the idea there. So, we looked at this. So if we're looking at just general trends in the U.S., we have a huge problem coming up here. In 1990, if we look, this is the amount of obese people in the U.S. About 15%, less than that, maybe 10% of the U.S. was obese. 2000, we were up to about 15%, maybe 20. 2010, we were at about 30%. 2020, now we're at 40% of the population is in the obese category, and 70% is in the overweight category, right? And everybody likes to talk about health insurance and who should pay for it, but these trends aren't going to make the costs come down, right? They're only going to make the costs go up. Doesn't matter who pays for it. So we have some real problems, and it's it would be good if we could maintain our health so that we can do things that we want to be doing with our life. Here's another trend, right? So up there you see 40% for adults being obese. It's grown from 30% just 20 years ago at this point. And then the youth have also been increasing in body fat percentage, which is not going to be good. You got a good video that's due tomorrow night on diabetes, which can be linked to this. So, we need to learn how to control this, right? So we're going to learn how to do that today, actually. If we're looking at leading causes of death, we got heart disease, cancer, stroke. These are all increased with obesity, which is not a good time. And if we actually look at the causes of these, this is 2000 data, but I really like this graph. So this tobacco is number one here. But now poor diet and physical activity has jumped to the top. And so this is what they call the big two when we're looking at losing weight, right? And what we should be talking is losing fat mass or changing body composition, right? So we need to think about our diet, what we're eating, and how much activity we're actually doing. So this is what's called the resting metabolic rate test. Does anybody know what a resting metabolic rate is? Yeah, what is it? Yes, it's how many calories you burn at rest, right? And so this is me when I was real young. We bring people into the lab. People sign up for this test. They lay on this table, and we hook them up to this mask, and then we put a nose clip on them. And basically what we're measuring is carbon dioxide and oxygen. So when somebody breaks down carbon dioxide, we know they're using carbohydrates. When they are exhaling, we know how much oxygen you have to consume to break down fat. So we can tell if they're breaking down carbs, if they're breaking down fat, and then how many calories they're using per day just for survival. So that's what resting metabolic rate is. Another thing we use this test for is to make sure that they're mostly burning fat at rest. So sometimes what can happen if you're stressed, you're going to be burning lots of carbs at rest, which is typically not a good situation. Again, remember, a bear comes along, your body starts pumping carbs out because it's we got to fight, right? And so if you're always stressed, that's going to cause some problems. Another thing that this can indicate, let's say somebody comes in, they're burning lots of carbohydrates at rest. One, they probably had coffee in the morning, which they're not supposed to do. You got to be in a fasted state to do this, but people do that all the time, and then they tell me afterwards. Or it could be like a thyroid disorder. Has anybody ever heard of a thyroid disorder before? Yeah, okay. And so thyroid is it's It's a little organ, and it pumps out hormones, right? And they control your metabolism a little bit. So sometimes, if you're trying to start a weight loss program and you're really struggling sometimes, it might be worthwhile going into the doctor's office, because there's all kinds of different things that they can tell you, right? They can test your thyroid. I had a lady, she was gaining 5 pounds a week uncontrollably. She didn't know what was going on. So she came in for this test. We were actually hoping to see some thyroid thing because the doctor was concerned about cancer in a certain area that caused her to gain weight. And her test came back perfectly normal. And then she just started crying, right? And it's like, yep, that was a tough one, right? And so most of the time it's just somebody trying to figure out what they have, how many calories they're burning. But sometimes there could be a medical issue going on there. So it's worth going in if you're really struggling to the doctor and just getting a basic checkup. And they can kind of help you out and get you started and make sure there's not a deeper medical condition going on there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually go and calculate an estimated resting metabolic rate. So what you're going to do is you're going to take out your devices and you're going to type in BMR. Let me try that again. BMR calculator. You're going to search BMR calculator. All right, so once you get BMR calculator, you're going to click on this first one, this calculator.net, and open that up. So BMR calculator, and then open up calculator.net, and then there you'll see 4 boxes. So you'll select, you put your age in there, you select your gender, you will put in your height and your weight. And you're not sharing this with anybody, right? Again, I don't care. Weight doesn't matter, but we're still going to put it in because it can help estimate our resting metabolic rate. And then you click calculate. And then once you click calculate, you're going to see this number, and I want you to write that number down in your notebook. So this is your basal metabolic rate, BMR. All right, now that we have that, let's discuss with our group members, what is your BMR number? Just the BMR number. How many calories per day is your basal metabolic rate? Discuss. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to, I need 2 volunteers to share their basal metabolic rate with me. What do we have? All right, what do we have right here?
2022.
2022. What do we have up here? 1745. Okay, so there's a difference here. Discuss with your group members. Why is there a difference? Discuss. All right, let's go right here. What are our thoughts? What could be some reasons there's a difference? Yeah, height, weight, and age, right? So as you get older, your basal metabolic rate is going to drop, right? Which makes body composition management more difficult when we're older, right? And also, your height and your weight determines your overall mass, right? And so the more mass we have, the more calories we burn, right? So, for me, I'm burning about 1,600, almost 1,700. Right here, you're burning 2,000, right? 1,700. So everybody's got a little bit different number. And so just again, this basal metabolic rate, this is what your body needs to survive. So just bare minimum. So the rule is, unless you have like medical consultation, you never eat below your basal metabolic rate. All right, you always need to eat that much. This happens all the time in the performance lab. Somebody's trying to lose weight, they're really struggling. They come into the lab. Maybe they'll do this test and maybe they'll do a body composition test, and they're just not making any progress, right? And they're super frustrated, so we start talking about stuff. I'm like, okay, well, how many calories are you eating per day? And they're like, well, like 600 calories. And it's like, their body's starving, right? And what happens when the body's starving is the body is smart. Well, it's dumb and it's smart. It's like, when you start eating less calories, your body says, oh, we're not getting the food we need. This must be hard times. We're going to decrease that basal metabolic rate. So it's very frustrating for people because then as that basal metabolic rate decreases, now right away you get great gains from eating 600 calories a day, right? But then pretty soon that goes away, and now you're just in a terrible situation where you're going to have to eat, or you're going to have to eat more in order to lose less later, and then you actually gain extra fat. This is what's called overshooting. It's called fat overshooting. And this is the problem with dieting. There is a lot of evidence that suggests that people who go on diets have higher body fat percentages, right? And the mechanism here is what happens with somebody is they decide they need to go on a diet. So they start eating not very many calories, right? They start eating 800 calories. And then so right away, great, right? They're losing all this weight. But then that basal metabolic rate drops, things start to decrease. And then what happens is they lose fat mass and they lose lean mass. And right, that's making our body composition worse because we want as much muscle mass, well, not as much, but we want a good amount of muscle mass and a healthy amount of fat mass. But then you lose fat mass and you lose lean mass. And then the problem with that is that when you're losing those, your body will say then, okay, we need more hunger hormones, right? So when you start losing weight, your body's going to pump out more hunger hormones, say, yo, we need this animal to eat because it's clearly not eating, so we need to drive it to eat, right? And then sometimes people will ignore those signals when they're dieting. Problem with that is when you ignore your hunger, it actually increases the reward of food, so then you don't eat right away, you don't eat, and then you end up binging, and then you feel bad about it, and then you get depressed and stressed, and then more, so you see what the problem is here, right? And then what happens is, let's say somebody gains all that fat weight back, because that's usually what happens after a diet that people do, is they usually go right back up to that weight, but now they have less muscle mass and more fat mass in the same weight, which is a huge problem, because you have lower muscle mass now, the body is still sending you signals to increase your hunger to get your muscle mass up there. But then the problem is, especially if people aren't lifting weights, is that, well, now their body's going to continue to eat that hunger and then they drift upwards. So there's a lot of evidence, a lot of research out there that says that people in the healthy range who are trying to go on these diets and stuff actually increase their fat mass over a period of years because of this fat overshooting problem, because the body is trying to compensate whenever you lose weight, which makes weight loss fairly difficult. The other problem is, as you lose this weight, your basal metabolic rate actually goes down. So you lose this weight, particularly your muscle mass. Muscle mass burns about 50 calories per pound of muscle mass. So as you lose muscle mass, you actually start burning less calories, which then can store more fat, and it just makes everything very frustrating, right? So we've got to watch out for these crash diets and not eating enough and all these different things, right? So, all right, we're going to leave that alone. Basal metabolic rate, again, you need to be eating that much food, no matter what, right? That's how you, unless you have like medical advice otherwise, because that's how you maintain your immune system, your bone system, your brain function, right? All these important things, because your body is built out of this, right? So, next, let's look at our sedentary rate, and let's write that number down. So look up your sedentary rate. Oh yeah, sorry, you put all your devices away. All right, write down our sedentary rate, and then we're going to do the next step before we put those things away again, just to help us out. All right, so sedentary calories. Let's figure out how many calories we're burning when we're sedentary. Then we're going to write that down and then discuss with your group members how many calories you're burning sedentary. This is just waking up and going about your day, right? No exercise involved, just being alive and being alert. All right, discuss. Yeah.
What's the difference with sedentary and then just regular BMR?
Great. All right, that was where I was going.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, so we had a question right here. What's the difference between sedentary and regular BMR? Basal metabolic rate is kind of like you in a coma. Not quite, but you just normal human function, not moving around. So being alert, using your eyes, looking around, light actually increases your metabolic rate or how many calories you're burning. So yeah, basal metabolic rate is like baseline. Sedentary is like you get out of bed in the morning and then you go sit at your office job and you walk to the bathroom, you eat some food. There's this thing called the thermogenic effect of food. So breaking down food actually increases how many calories you burn because that's a process that takes calories. So yeah, that's where that comes from. So good. Yep. So sedentary, if you're not exercising, is probably what you're realistically burning here. So that's a good number to know. And now what I want you to do is you have a bunch of exercise levels on there. Think about where you currently are or where you would like to be. All right. So if you're sedentary and you're not exercising, think about where you'd like to be, and then write that number. Write down that number. Or what are you currently doing activity-wise, and then write down that number. All right, and then discuss with your group members what is that exercise level and how many calories are at that level. All right, so if we're looking at your total daily energy expenditure, this is sometimes called TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. We have a resting metabolic rate, right? That includes your basal metabolic rate. That includes the thermogenic effect of food, so how many calories it takes your body to break down food. That includes your daily activity in terms of like waking up, right? Walk into your office. Here's a good thing that you should know actually is thinking, like critically thinking and using your brain, actually burns a ton of calories. There's a study done on chess players and how many calories they burn during their like matches. I don't remember the number, but it was insane. It was exercise almost, right? So if you're like, oh, I really don't want to do homework, right? It was like, well, hey, I'll burn some calories. So there you go. And then exercise, right? So exercise is that extra amount of total daily energy expenditure. So when we looked at those big two that are causing most of the deaths in the U.S., which is lack of physical activity and calories, right? In the U.S. currently right now what is happening is people are exercising less than they ever have before, and people are eating more than they ever have before. And so that's what's causing this obesity epidemic, right? And it's not good. So we need to learn what we can do about this. So in the most basic, simple format, if you want to lose weight, and primarily I'm concerned about losing fat mass, but again, if you have enough to lose, but it's calories in versus calories out. So people want to say eat these foods, don't eat these foods, all this stuff. Doesn't matter, right? It's calories in versus calories out. So can anybody volunteer their exercise calories for me real quick? Yeah, all right, what do we have?
It was 3,327.
3,300, and we'll just call it 3,300. All right, nice. So let's say you wanted to lose 1 pound of fat per week, right? Even though you probably don't need to. But let's just say that you wanted to do that. What then you would want to shoot for, calorie-wise, if you're eating, is right around 2,800 calories. So a 500 calorie deficit is what you need to lose 1 pound of fat over a week. Now, that's oversimplified. It's a lot more complex than that. And I don't think you need to eat actually 500 calories less, and I'm going to explain that in a lot more detail, right? So let's go back up here, and let's just say, what was your sedentary rate?
Sedentary was 2,350.
2,300. All right, let's call it 2,300, right? So, and then what was your basal metabolic rate?
1,920.
All right, 1,900 and... All right, we'll just call it 900. There we go. So this is a program that I actually put my friend on. He was a huge dude. He was like 260, solid muscle. He had too much fat mass too, though, right? The ratio wasn't quite right. And we were lifting weights. He was trying to build muscle, but also lose a little bit of fat mass. And so this is sedentary. Let me write this here. So that's sedentary. And this is called basal, or maybe resting, however you want to term it, right? So the program that I put him on is on days when he didn't work out, so on days when he was sedentary, because you should take some off days. You shouldn't be working out every day, in my opinion, unless you're a very high-level athlete, and even then I still think a day off is good. He would eat his basal metabolic rate, because you need to make sure you eat that much food, and then he'd walk around and he'd burn a little bit of excess. So he's in a calorie deficit there, right? On days when we would work out, he would do the workout, and then he would eat about 200 to 300 calories less. So I don't think you need the 500, but that's just a good clean example of some math there. So this is how you would lose weight overall. But we don't want to do that, right? We want to be building muscle in the process as well. So we need to add some nuance to this discussion. So whenever we're talking about losing weight, we're always thinking about what we need to take away, how little we need to eat, all this stuff. And that's only one aspect of the problem, I guess, right? We're only thinking about decreasing those calories, but calories are important. What we never talk about is increasing that basal metabolic rate, right? So there's actually ways that we can increase this. So again, this is just an estimation, right? So we want to think about how can we increase our calories throughout the entire day. Let's go right here. So the first one is just exercise, right? Just cardio, moving more often. So real quick in your group, what I want you to discuss is what's your favorite form of cardio? Discuss. Favorite form of cardio? All right, how many people out there love running? Or like walking or hiking? Let's throw that in there as well. Okay, nice. So a good rule of thumb is walking 1 mile or running a mile is the equivalent to about 100 calories. All right, so it's about 100 calories. Any bikers out there? All right, so biking is about, walking or running 1 mile is about the equivalent of 6 miles of biking. So 6 miles of biking is about 100 calories. So just some good little estimates there for you, all right? Yeah, it's a lot more. Wheels, they're great inventions. But, gears, wheels, crazy stuff. Much less effort. Any swimmers out there? All right, I don't actually know how many laps it is. But anyways, there you go. So does anybody have these watches that kind of track you? Yeah, okay, so they're pretty good. They're really good estimates, actually. It uses heart rate. Sometimes it uses steps. So this is a really easy way to tell how many calories you're burning per day. And you can get these cheap now. Some are like, I don't know, like $50 or something, right? So anybody hate running out there? Where are my people at? Yeah, all right, let's go here. What do we like to do instead? Lift. Okay, no. Okay, well then in that case what you can do is you can do like circuit training. Get your heart rate up there. Yeah, good. We'll talk more about that in the future. Right here too?
I like circuit training. I just like walking.
Circuit training. Anybody like to do sports instead, right? Yeah. I like to say we're not that far away from dogs because, if you throw a ball, we love to chase it. We won't even question it, right? We'll just go. So, if that's how you need to do cardio, go for it, right? You might as well enjoy yourself. All right, that's just exercise. And this is just going to increase the amount of calories that you're burning every day. And this is one of the problems we're having in the U.S. is we're not exercising. And you got a video on Thursday, which is going to show you how important that is. There is some evidence out there that suggests that people who are seriously trying to lose weight, they may need to exercise up to 80 to 90 minutes about 4 to 5 days a week. So, you don't need to start there. You don't start there right away, right? But that's just a good idea of what it takes for some people, right? And again, everybody's bodies are different. We're not going to use that extreme right now. This is saying if you're not exercising at all right now, right? The next one that's super important is building muscle. Like I said, every pound of muscle mass that you put on, you are going to burn an additional about 50 calories per day. So, let's say you spend the next year lifting weights and say you put on 10 pounds of muscle mass, right? You put on that 10 pounds of muscle. Let's say you don't change your eating at all. You're just eating the exact same all the way across the board. Once you have those 10 pounds of muscle on and you kept eating the same way, you would drop 1 pound of fat every single day. Every 11 days. Every 11 days you'd lose 1 pound of fat just from doing nothing else, which is crazy. I started lifting super hard a couple years ago just to see what I could do, and I was actually measuring myself every 6 weeks with the body composition just to see how things were going. And I put on about 10 pounds of muscle mass, and I just started losing tons of weight. And I was like, oh, this is not good. Like I was talking to some my friends who are really struggling with their weight, and I'm just like, man, I can't eat enough. And they're just like, oh, it must be nice, right? And I'm like, well, that was the effect of muscle mass, right? So putting on muscle mass is going to be good for everybody. Also, a problem that I see is a lot of women tend to not want to put on muscle mass, right? Because we think, oh, I'm going to turn into the Hulk, right? But people want to get toned. Muscle mass is what gives you that toned look, right? So it's not weight loss that gives you the toned look. Of course, you can have muscle mass under fat mass, and the weight mass will help you get that toned look, right? But it's muscle mass that you want to get that toned look. So I see all kinds of women out there who are already skinny and they want to be toned, so they think they need to lose more weight, right? But it's like, no, you need to build that muscle mass. Anybody ever try to build muscle mass in here? Yeah, okay, pretty easy. Very difficult. Yeah, you are not going to walk into the weight room, pick up some weights, and accidentally turn into the Hulk. It's not going to happen. It's very difficult work, right? So don't be afraid of the weight room, right? You're not going to just swole up insane, right? So it's very good for everybody. So I highly recommend building muscle. So the question is, how do we build muscle? All right, and you might want to write some of this stuff down because this is the best right here. I've gone hard on this. So you want to build muscle. Let's say you're an absolute beginner. Let's start there. You're not doing any exercise, right? This is great news because you're going to get huge gains right away. You don't need to do anything fancy. All you got to start doing is doing push-ups in your bedroom, right? Like knee push-ups, right? Or even wall push-ups if you can't do normal push-ups, right? Just like this. Cool. All right. So just wall push-ups or just push-ups, right? Doesn't matter. You can do some lunges. You can do some sit-ups. You get the idea. You just got to start doing something. Sometimes when I'm not feeling very good and I'm kind of down and I'm not working out, and I start telling myself, you got to do something, right? And then I'm like, well, I don't want to do anything. So then it's like, all right, well, you're kind of being, a whiny little bee, right? So let's get you going here. So it's like, all right, well, can you do 10 push-ups, right? And I'm like, oh, fine, I could do 10 push-ups. Maybe I need a shower, right? And it's like, all right, well, I do 10 push-ups, and then I do 10 lunges, and then I go shower. And it's like, all right, there you go. You got the ball rolling, right? So you don't need to change the world when you start working out. That's the first thing it's the first mistake people make. They think, oh, I'm going to crush it every day, and they go super hard, and then they get really sore. It's like, no. First 2 weeks to a month, you just got to get consistent. Very small steps, right? Do 10 push-ups, 10 lunges, 10 sit-ups, maybe do another set. Just get the ball moving, right? You can do a little more than that, but you get the idea here. All right, so you've been doing that for a little bit. Let's say now you want to either get you can do weight, you can do videos at home or whatever you want to do, right? Great YouTube videos out there that you can do. That works just great. And you can get huge, prison people in prison, sometimes they don't have a weight room and they get just absolutely jacked with just body weight stuff. So you can do that, right? But let's say you want to learn how to lift weights, or there's cables, there's machines, there's all kinds of good stuff. We're going to talk more about that in the coming weeks here. So let's say you go into the weight room, right? First of all, the weight room's intimidating, but if you go in there, it's going to be okay, right? And you'll become comfortable in that environment. And if you go consistently, you might even find a workout buddy, or if you know a friend, pull them in with you, right? I'm going to try to do that with my friend who's struggling with his weight, because that would be good for both of us, right? So, all right, so you go to the weight room. Right away when you get to the weight room, you don't need to, again, dominate the world, right? All you have to do is just start super simple, grab some really light weights, right, and just start doing them, right? We're talking 15 to 20 reps, lightweight, just going through the motions, and you do that for another month or so, or maybe longer, maybe 2 months, whatever it takes, right? You just want to learn good form, establish a routine, right? If you're just going to the weight room and you're making your life miserable and always pushing it, you're not having a good time, the likelihood that you're going to go back there is very low, right? So you just want to go there. Sometimes you have a lazy day. That's all right. I have those days, right? And it's just get in some reps, call it a day, thank yourself, and go home, right? So, all right, now you've been doing that for a while. So you've been doing pretty good. Now you want to say, all right, now we're going to kind of start specifying that we want to start building muscle. The magic rep range, it's called hypertrophy. Does anybody know about hypertrophy? Yeah, can you tell me what the rep range for hypertrophy is?
What?
Yeah, can you explain just hypertrophy training?
Just the rep range usually around 10 to 15 reps. The point is tear the muscle fibers that can grow, and then the rest is usually 60 to 90%.
Yeah, perfect. All right, and I'm going to modulate that a little bit, but that was really good. So yeah, it's about 8 to 12 reps, and you can go up to 15. There's no magic number out there, right? But it's ballpark, right? So what I would do, the best way I think, in my opinion, is you've been working out now for 3 months, or maybe you've already been doing this. Then what you do, and bicep curls are just an easy one to show. So you go pick up some dumbbells, and you start lifting them, right? You're doing your reps, and let's say you get to 9, you get to 10, you get to 11, right? And maybe you're done right there, right? That's perfect, right? So in my opinion, when you're lifting weights in the weight room, the best way to do this for muscle building is you lift weight until you can do 12 reps. So let's say I'm doing biceps again, I get to 12, awesome. I set my 15s down, then I go to my 20s, right? And then I start there, maybe I can only do 6. That's all right. Take another rest, pick them up again, and then I do 6 more, right? Eventually that 6 is going to turn into 12, right? Once I get to 12, boom, now I'm at 25s, right? Once I get to 12, boom, now I'm at 30s. So that's the easiest way to go about this, right? So 12 reps, increase weight. Don't do that right away, right? Start with 15, 20 reps or body weight stuff, nice and easy. And then, then you get to those 12 reps. So what's most ideal is doing multiple sets. So 3 sets, right? So you do bicep curls. So reps are the amount of curls you do. You put them down, that was set 1. Then maybe you go do some lunges, right? You can go do those over there. Then you come back for set 2, pick up those. This is set 2. You do your 10 reps again, go back to your lunges, right? That's one way to do it. You can increase those. Let's say you've been doing that for a while. So here's a good story. When I got back to Boise State, I was out of shape, 1% away from being overweight. I was like, all right, well, you're low on muscle mass, so we need to go build some muscle. So what I did is I did a body composition test, found out I was 18% body fat, and then I went and I lifted weights, just general, nothing fancy, for 6 weeks. Lift weights for 6 weeks. I put on 3 pounds of muscle. It's like awesome, right? Then I was just kind of testing myself now because I had a baseline. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do the exact same workouts for another 6 weeks. I only built 1 pound of muscle that next 6 weeks, right? Very frustrating for me. But what this means is you need to increase stimulus, right? Because then just to test it, I did the exact same workouts for another 6 weeks. Then I gained no muscle mass. So I'm just going to the gym. Still good for me. I'm maintaining my gains, but I'm not growing my gains, right? And then so I'm like, all right, what do we need to do next? So the next thing was you can increase your sets, right? So instead of doing 3 sets, I did 4, and then I did 5, right? And then I did 6. And you slowly build that up if you want. There's another way you can do it, and this is actually what I really focused on, was decreasing the rest between my sets. Between my sets, right? So let's say squats, right? So I go to the squat rack, and I do my squats. I do 12 of them, right? Of course, good form. We will talk a little bit about that. Good form, and then I take 20 seconds rest. And then this is the absolute worst form of training. Has anybody ever done this before? Short rest? Oh, isn't it just terrible? Yeah. Okay, so in 20 seconds, you're already getting under the bar, hating my life, do my squats again. I'm cramping a little bit. When you do this type of training, you're gonna have to decrease weight, right? Because what you're doing with the 20 seconds rest or the short rest is you are attacking the muscle fiber again before it recovers. Because like we said here, you want to do muscle damage, because when you do muscle damage, you actually repair that muscle damage, and that's what grows your muscles and becomes more resilient. So that's a good thing to know too. Working out is actually making your body worse. It's breaking your body down. But without working out, you don't trigger the recovery process, which makes you stronger. So it's really important to get that recovery in, right? So good. Well, we're talking about recovery. Let's stay on that topic. Short rest. Let me stay on one thing first here. That's all I had. Good. All right. Short rest. Beautiful. All right, so now recovery. When you're done with your workout, this goes for cardio, this goes for weightlifting, you have to eat something, right? It's important because your body rebuilds itself out of what you eat. If you don't do that, you're just spinning your wheels, right? If you don't eat after you lift, you're not adding anything to rebuild yourself with. So great part about this is you can eat almost anything you want, right? You want to have some protein in there, you want to have some carbohydrates in there. So sugary things are great. Anybody a big fan of chocolate milk out there? Oh, the greatest post-recovery in my opinion. I love it. I'm a big fan, right? I've started drinking kefir after my workouts. Anybody had kefir before? It's like a sugary milk bacteria drink. Sounds gross, but it's apparently good for my gut bacteria. So, or like go get a delicious coffee and have like an apple with some peanut butter. You can do a peanut butter jelly sandwich. You can do you can go to Chick-fil-A, get a Chick-fil-A sandwich. You can go to McDonald's, right? You should reward yourself for a job well done because you're going to rebuild your body. So real quick, let's maybe discuss what are some things we'd like to have for a post-workout meal, snack. What do we want? Discuss. All right, I'm just going to pick on a few groups, and let's just see what we came up with. Let's go over here. What do we have?
We said apples, peanut butter, and coffee.
Oh, yeah, perfect, right? All right, that's what I said too, but that's good. All right, nice. How about, let's go here.
We said like
Oh, who's talking? Oh, I can't tell with mess. Right here? That's who I was hoping would. Okay, cool. Smoothies, anything in particular? Okay, I would just say make sure there's protein in there, right? Yes, the protein is good, right? And sugar or carbs. We'll talk about the difference, although the similarities. So good. Right here.
we said chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk. Oh, and Chick-fil-A, yeah, both delicious. All right, how about right here?
We didn't have a steak and sugar.
Oh, well, let's see. There we go.
Protein shakes.
Protein shakes, yeah. A good thing to think about with protein shakes is make sure that they have sugar in them because there's a low carb movement, so they're taking out the sugar. But you need the carbs to really utilize the protein. So we want to make sure there's sugar. This is the time to really, if you love a sugary cereal, right now is the time, right? So good, yeah, because once you've exercised, you've used a lot of your carb stores, and you're just going to suck that sugar right out, so it's not going to be too bad. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. So good. And let's go up here. I think this is a group somewhere. Yeah, right up top. There we go. What was it? Pasta and protein shakes? Perfect. Yeah, all right, whatever you want to eat, right? This is your moment. So good. And that's going to rebuild your muscles. So you get increases in protein synthesis when we have this happen. Another good tip is if you eat another meal within 2 hours, you're going to get another spike in protein synthesis. So what I do is I lift, I go drink my kefir, and then I relax a little bit, maybe shower, and then an hour later I come back and I eat a meal. Right? Sometimes I'm really, really hungry after my lift, so I'll eat my meal first, then I'll relax into my shower, and then I'll go have a snack later, something like that, because you get 2 gains there. So you don't want to waste your gains, right? Because you did hard work to get those. This goes for cardio as well. We want to fuel our bodies after we work out. All right, good. Now what I want to think about is, let's say you're not trying to lose weight, right? But you're just trying to build muscle mass. What should we do with our calories? So look at the calories that you're burning with exercise. Think about if you're just trying to build muscle mass, what should you do with your calories? Discuss with your group members. And let's see what we come up with. All right, let's go to this group right here. What should we do if we're just trying to build muscle mass? Yeah, all right, so hike it up. Any guess on how much? Okay, yeah, and so 500 calories will build muscle mass, almost exclusively muscle mass if you're a beginner, right? Because you got lots of muscle to build. But as you get more advanced, if you eat 500 calories excess, you're going to build a little bit of fat mass as well, which isn't terrible. Anybody ever bulk in here where they're just gaining fat mass and lean mass? Yeah, right. So that's the thing that bodybuilders do. There's some evidence that suggests you only need about 200 to 300 extra calories, and then you don't really gain that fat mass. It could still happen, right? And who knows? You might not be maximizing your gains, but that's a good little tip for you. 200 to 300 extra calories. If you want to build muscle mass and lose a little bit of fat mass at the same time, you could eat the same amount of calories across the board because that muscle building process takes extra calories, right? And so that way you can just kind of lose a little bit and you can build a little bit, right? Kind of in the middle. And if you are lifting and you're doing your nutrition properly after your workout, you can actually be at a calorie deficit, right? 200 to 300 calories, eating 200 to 300 calories less than you're burning, and you can still build muscle and lose a little bit of fat mass, right? So you can kind of decide where you need to be for that different stratification there. So along with that, I got sleep with an exclamation point because sleep is what's going to release your human growth hormone and your HGH after your workout. So sometimes, because I'm not the best at sleeping all the time, is I'll work out really hard and then I'll sleep for 4 hours. And then it's like, well, you just missed out on all the testosterone, all the HGH, and like professional athletes literally dope with those to get more gains than their competitors, right? And it's like, you can get that for free if you just sleep 8 hours, 9 hours, 7 hours, right? More than 6, right? So make sure you're going to bed because that's going to really help you. All right. Well, let's discuss at your group. Do you feel comfortable with your knowledge to build muscle mass, and what questions do you have? Let's discuss that first. What questions? Any questions you have? This is your moment right here. Yeah, right on floor 1. We got big windows. Yeah, it costs money, but I mean, if you want, you can just send me an email and we can just set up a tour. Yeah, and you can just come in. Like, plenty of students do that, and I can show you all the cool equipment. Yeah, and if you're in kinesiology, we have you have labs in there in the future. But yeah, so yeah, if you're interested, send me an email. Yeah, I can send you prices and discounts and everything. So, yeah. All right, so this is your moment to ask questions on muscle building. What questions do we have? Or on becoming toned, or whatever we want to call it. All right, I'm going to just ask some groups, and let's see how we do with that. How about, is this a group? No, this is a group. Yeah, right here. What do we have?
We kind of just, is it beneficial to like eat before, like a certain time before the workout, so you get like the carbs and energy through the workout?
So you could do that. It's not necessary. There's lots of debate. Should you fast and then exercise before you eat, because then you might burn a little bit more fat mass? That it might burn more fat mass to exercise before you eat, but there's some evidence against that as well. So it doesn't really matter. If you can eat and not get enough to the stomach, then go for it. Like, I used to be able to eat just a cheeseburger and then go for a run and be just fine, right? If you can do that, that's great too. I had somebody in my other class say after they exercise, they can't eat because their stomach's upset. And then I asked them, could you eat before your activity? And they said yes. So if you eat right before and then you go exercise, you will still get the extra, because you still have that food in your stomach, right? So in terms of eating before, if we're talking about like let's say an athlete who has to perform, if you're eating like carbohydrates, like a high carb meal, those get into your bloodstream pretty quick, as long as it's not a huge meal. That'll take, I don't know, an hour, maybe 2 hours to get all into your system. If you're eating like a big, like high protein meal, then you want to eat probably 4 hours before your competition. So a meal, at least 4 hours, I would say, with some protein, and then I would say a small little meal beforehand. So yeah, good question. Let's go right here. What do we have?
I just was thinking about I think get better at like the whole diet part of working out, like building muscle mass. So I was just saying I need to focus on what the calorie amount that I.
Oh yeah, just eating enough. Yeah, and especially if you're very active, it's like a full-time job trying to eat enough food. So yeah, good. Let's go. I don't think I've talked to this group, have I yet? Or maybe I just recently did. Us two, right? What do we have? Yeah, Karen.
Just saying, I got a question. Is like no specific time during the day that would be the best time to work out? I figure you don't want to mess up your circadian rhythm.
Yeah, so working out at night kind of hypes you up, so that's not the best time to do that. Mid-afternoon is going to be your best performance, so like around 3 o'clock. So if you're really trying to like maximize everything, around 3. But to be honest, I would say whatever works with your lifestyle. Mornings work really well for people, do it then, right? But you'll get your best performance at around 3. That's one of the reasons why, well, maybe school schedules as well, but practice is usually held at 3, and competitions are usually held in that afternoon slot, because that's your peak optimum time usually. So yeah, good question. How about right here?
Yeah, I just had a question on 15-minute window after you work out. Is that like the perfect time to eat that shake or something?
Yeah, and I would say it's a 30-minute window, but the sooner the better in my opinion. So yeah, good. Right here.
We kind of just talked about how, like, to build muscle, like, you need to be eating a lot more, and how it's just, like you said, like, sometimes go off.
Yeah, and you can still build muscle without eating excess if you time it right. So yeah, and you can break down about 20 to 30 grams of protein per I don't know, per hour or two or something like that. You don't need to eat like all the protein, right, at once. It's like just so 20 to 30 grams is really all you need. So, yeah. What other questions do we have?
We asked like where the lab was.
Oh, yeah. So the performance lab is in the Norco building, which is good because somebody else brought this up. Anybody can get tested in there for any of the tests we have. It does cost money, and so we have a website. You can just search us, Human Performance Lab at Boise State, and you can find all of our stuff there. But I do have a 10% discount for students. So if you are interested, somebody asked how they can get free body composition testing. Anybody ever been to the NutriShop and done their scale thing? Yeah, so it's like a scale you stand on and it tells your body fat percentage. It's free, right? Yeah, okay. So that's one option. Those can be horribly inaccurate, though. So I've seen them off by like 10 or 12%. A company once sent us one in the lab to try it out. We tried it out for 6 months, and then we sent it back to them after we did some studies. So, yeah, they're good. They're ballpark. They can be right on. I had 2 people in the lab last week, and the number that they got at the NutriShop was exactly on. But I've also seen it be far off. And depends on your hydration level and your dehydration level, because the signal goes through with water. So you got to watch out for that. But if you want a ballpark, you could go there. The cheapest one we have in the lab is skin fold testing, where I got to like pinch you and measure the fat fold, which isn't that bad, but that's $18 after the discount if you're interested, right? So I'm not trying to be a salesman here, but people have been asking. So, all right, before I turn into a salesman, any other questions? All right, so some other ways to increase our metabolic rate is eating protein. So I talked about the thermogenic effect of food. When you eat food, it takes calories to break that food down, and protein takes a long time to break down. It takes about 4 hours to completely process. So, yeah, eating more protein in your diet can increase how many calories you burn every single day. Eating more frequently can also help with that. So, some of the suggestions is eating like smaller meals, like maybe 6 small meals throughout the day, because every time you eat a little bit, you're going to actually be burning more calories. And that's also good to control that hunger, because we don't want to ignore hunger, right? Because if we ignore that hunger, again, that reward rises in our brain for eating food, and then we'll probably eat more in the long run. So a good idea, if you're working on this stuff, is carry just small, little healthy snacks with you, and then just eat more frequently, because that's going to burn more calories throughout your day. Decreasing stress. Actually, I want to back up. Let's do this differently. All right, so exercise. Let's say you're not doing anything at all right now. Exercise, let's say you start walking 3 miles a day, right? So 3 miles a day is going to be about 300 calories. So cool, there we go. We're increasing our metabolic rate by 300 calories right there. Then let's say we start going to the gym as well. We're lifting 2 days a week, right? And maybe after 2 months, we built 2 pounds of muscle, right? Every pound of muscle is going to burn about 30 to 50 calories. Let's say you build 2 to 3 pounds of muscle. So let's say you're burning an additional 100 calories right there, right? Then we talked about sleep, how the sleep affects our hunger hormones, right? That's about, if you're getting 6 hours or less, statistically speaking, you tend to eat 200 to 300 calories extra. So if you're getting 8 hours of sleep, that would be about 200 to 300 calories there. Let's just call it 200 to keep the number low. Then we're eating protein, right? This isn't going to burn a ton of calories. We're just going to shoot for the low end, so things are realistic. We're going to say 50 calories if you eat lots of protein in your day. Eating more frequently, let's say you're eating 6 small meals, throw another 50 calories on there that you're now burning because of that. Now we have stress. There was a study that looked at stress levels in people, and they found that people with lower stress burned about 100 extra calories per day. So if you can get that stress down, right, calming down, meditating, taking time to enjoy yourself, that would be a good thing. Maybe it's medication, right? Who knows? Ice water is also very important. So technically calories are heat. And so if you take away heat, you're taking away calories. And if you take room temperature water versus ice cold water per cup, if you know like what a measuring cup looks like, maybe about the size of a baseball, right, of water, ice cold water is going to burn about 8 calories more than room temperature. So let's assume that you drink 10 of those a day, maybe, right? And now that's 80 calories there. Let's just round up to a clean 100 there. Coffee burns a little bit as well. Let's just say 50. All right, so now look what we just did there, right? So we're exercising, we're walking a little bit, we're burning 300 calories there. We built 2 to 3 pounds of muscle, so now we're burning an extra 100. We're at 400 there. let's throw out the sleep because that's dealing with hunger, which we're going to talk about in a second. So let's just get rid of the sleep here because, well, let's leave it on there. We'll do a little exclamation point. We're at 400. We're going to skip sleep. We're eating a little bit more protein maybe, right, with our meals, so we're burning more calories. Now we're at 450. Eat more frequently, 500. Decreasing our stress, we're at 600 calories now. Ice water and coffee, let's just call that 100. So we're at 700 calories right there, right? If you did those things and you increase your metabolic rate that much and, you're eating about the same level, one, you're either going to stop gaining extra fat mass, and let's say you were already eating perfect. So you weren't gaining fat mass, you were just staying right where you were. You did all these things. You're going to lose about a pound and a half of fat per week right there, right? Just by increasing our basal metabolic rate. So we want to think about how can we increase our metabolic rate rather than like how can we eat less food, right? Because food is good and it fuels our body. So, and then if you throw in the sleep into there, right, that affects your hunger, you're looking at 900 calories. That's 2 pounds of fat loss right there, and that's max that you want to do without doctor's supervision, right? So 1 to 2 pounds of fat loss per week is about as extreme as you want to go, because otherwise you get that overshooting and you actually can gain more fat mass while losing muscle mass. And we don't want to do that long term. That's that dieting thing that we don't want to be doing, right? So, good. Any questions that we have right here? All right, so now we're going to talk about how to decrease our calorie intake. Has anybody ever counted calories in here before? All right, and what are your thoughts?
I think it helps me. I just do it so I can make sure I have enough to kind of keep going.
Yeah, okay. So some people can do it in a healthy way. Other people can't do it in a healthy way. Anybody ever find they started doing it and it kind of got to their head a little bit? Yeah, right? So we got to know who we are when we're doing that stuff, right? Like my buddy that I put on a plan, he was good. He could handle the calorie counting, right? But sometimes we get obsessed with that. And there's studies that show that counting calories can lead to body image issues and eating disorders. We got to watch out for that. But if you can handle it, great. A good thing, I guess a good way to maybe do it in a healthy way, if you just need to have an idea of what you're eating per day, is, and I do this way, maybe 2 days a week or 2 days a year, I'll just measure my calories for just 2 days, right? So I just estimate what I'm eating, put it into a calculator, and it's like, oh, you're eating about this much, right? And then I have a ballpark idea of how much I'm eating per day, right? And then I do 1 day of exercising and 1 day of not exercising. What I do is I eat whenever I'm hungry, and I eat until I'm full, and then I just enter what I ate, right? And then I do the same the next day when I didn't exercise, and my hunger tracks my activity level very well. So you can kind of see how your hunger is doing, and then I think it's a better way to, I think it's a healthier way and a more intuitive way and a long-term way to manage that, because then over time you can just say, okay, well, I worked out today, I'm hungry, so I'm eating. And I just do that, every year, just twice, and then it seems to be working out so far. So that's one thing you can go about doing. With intermittent fasting, has anybody ever done this? Yeah, okay, so there's a study in France that looked at the difference between counting calories and then intermittent fasting, which is just having a set period of time for eating and then a set period of time for not eating. So, Grace, did you say? Yeah? No? Right here? Yeah, what was your setup?
Well, it worked out really easily for me because I did it where I didn't eat after 8 p.m. up until, I think it was like 8 a.m.
Oh, yeah,
A
so
12-hour period or a little bit longer, and it worked out really easily for me because I was working like 8-9 hours a day, and like it just worked out easily for me.
yeah, so you'd eat like at 8 a.m. and you'd stop eating by 8 p.m. Perfect. 12 hours of eating, 12 hours of not. People go really extreme with 2 hours. I'm not a huge fan of that. So maybe. That's complicated. Anyways, yeah, I like the 10 hours to 12 hours most, right? So the study in France found that people who just had the time frame rather than counting the calories, because it gets very tedious always entering your food in, right? So it's like they found that was more effective for weight loss. So for some people, if that's what works for you, then that's great, right? And there are some other benefits to that as well. But yeah, a rule about intermittent fasting is if you are working out beyond your hours, you still eat after your workout. You break your intermittent fasting to eat after the workout, right? So let's say something happened and you had to work out at 8 p.m. that night, right? One, that might interrupt your sleep, so maybe not a great idea. But if you did, you still want to eat after your workout. So we don't want to be doing that. And, you could be limiting your calories too low, so you got to watch out for that as well. So I'm not a huge fan of calorie counting. I am a fan of intermittent fasting. And then we talked about hunger, right? So when your body starts to lose weight, your body's going to send all these signals to eat more, right? Because it's kind of smart. It knows where you're at, and then your brain is just like, oh no, we're disappearing. Let's make this animal hungry, right? And then so it sends all these signals that makes you hungry, right? And it's like, and then we try to ignore those signals, and then our reward centers increase, and we binge and we eat, and it's very hard, right? So some ways we can reduce our hunger is, number one, decrease our stress, right? So we talked about that stress decreases your hunger, so you're eating about 100 calories less per day. Sleep and those hormones, right, leptin and ghrelin, that impacts about 200 to 300 calories per day. Well-rounded meals, this is super important. Has anybody ever, like appetite suppressants? This seems like a very popular topic. Do we feel this? Yeah? So I looked this up because I got a lot of questions last year. There's so many of them. The supplement industry is crazy. There's no governing body, so you have no idea what's in them. So when I was looking at all this crazy stuff, I was just like, it's so much information, it's overwhelming. And I was just like, okay, I'm not a fan of appetite suppressants anymore, because there's natural things that you can do to suppress your appetite, like eating a higher protein diet. Protein actually increases your satiety or your fullness, right? Same with adding some fat to your meal. So that's why I say a well-rounded diet, right? You want to have some carbs, you want to have some fats, you want to have some proteins. If we're just eating high sugar things, that leaves your stomach real quick, and then you get hungry again. But if you eat like something with substance, right, some fat and some protein, then that's going to be good for you. And just to round that off, those are the three macronutrients: fat, carbs, and protein. And society today tells us that carbs are bad. They also tell us that fat is bad. They also tell us that protein is bad. And it's like, well, you need all those things to survive, so they can't be that bad, right? So if without one of them, you're going to die, right? So it's pretty good. So well-rounded meals going to make you more full. Mindful, intuitive eating is super important too. I came across a study where they were looking at like appreciating your food a little more and how it helped with binge episodes, right, where you're eating a lot of food and then feeling guilty. And what they would do is the first step was they'd give somebody 3 little raisins, and then they'd ask them to describe the raisins, right? And so you're like, how do they taste? What's the texture like? And so the reason they give you 3 of them is because you only have 3, so you really got to focus. You really got to savor it, right? And so you start with 3 raisins, you go through the thing, and they find that people really enjoyed that little activity, right? And then they would eventually go to like crackers and cheese, and then they would have you have like a little bit of chocolate or whatever your favorite treat is, right? And so that can be a good little practice just to teach yourself to enjoy food. It's like, what do you really enjoy, right? Sit down, just take a tiny bit, and then you just taste it and you just reflect. How does it make you feel? What does it taste like? What's the texture like? Are you having a good time, right? That kind of stuff. Distracted eating too, right? We watch Netflix now, and the problem is when we're like watching Netflix or playing video games while we're eating, is we're not actually feeling our hunger, right, or our fullness, right? We're just kind of eating, and we end up eating more calories. So just trying to sit down without distractions and just eating a meal and trying to like mindfully eat that can really help you get in tune with your body, right? Also eating with people. When you eat with people, you tend to eat a little bit less, right? So that can help with your hunger. Fiber. Does anybody know what fiber is in? What foods? Yeah.
Is it in apples?
Apples, plants, right? So like grains can have high fiber. We'll talk about that more in detail. Fruits, vegetables. So eating like natural plant foods. It's indigestible fiber, which doesn't break down. Very good for gut bacteria. Again, we will learn more, but that'll make you feel fuller. And then building muscle, right? We talked about people who do these crash diets. They lose all this lean mass, right? All this muscle mass, and their hunger is going to stay up there until they replenish that muscle mass. So if you build muscle mass, you're going to actually be decreasing your hunger. All right, sweet. Real quick, with your group members, let's discuss, do you feel comfortable with your knowledge to change your body composition? What do we think? Discuss. All right, that's all I have. You are free to go. If you have questions, come talk to me. I'll see you next week.